mission now. I'm on a mission now. I'm on a mission now. I'm on a mission now.
How's it, guys? I'm Stanton, and today we're tying my fly called the Mountain Midge. This is an overall streamlined pattern that incorporates some CDC to give some movement to the fly. This fly overall, I use it under general conditions for the Cape streams, and it's supposed to imitate these small little midges that we see sometimes, but overall it's supposed to imitate the large black mayflies that we see sometimes on the Cape streams where trout jump clearly out of the water to get them. So let's get to it. I'm tying in the thread, so about 2 millimeters behind the hook eye, and I'm just wrapping towards the hook bend. And so I'm going to stop there. You would have seen me do just keeping the piece of thread in my hand. I am a very unconventional fly tie, but I believe keeping the thread like that and kind of guiding with the wraps should be where the fall, it looks a little bit neater to the eye, even though you're actually not really going to see it. I took a cedar owl feather, a cocktail feather, and this I'm pretty much using the barbs of the cedar owl feather. I'm using probably 5 or 6 of them just for the tail. I'm kind of just measuring how long that's supposed to be, like that. So now I'm using a pinch loop. Just put them into place. And I'm going to wrap one wrap underneath so it kind of stands up like that and it splays out the tail. And I'm doing 2 wraps. So what I'm going to do is just trim off the excess. There. And now I am grabbing a peacock herl feather of my liking. So now I'm just stripping off the, cleaning it so that I can get to the quill. So I'm kind of concentrating my efforts on the thick part because that's the strongest part of the peacock herl. So what I'm doing now, I'm just tying that in. To about there. Okay. So what I'm going to do next is I like to reinforce my flies a lot, and that kind of, it allows them to last a little bit longer on stream. So what I'm going to do now, before I wrap that peacock herl or the quill, I'm just going to take some super glue, lay it down right there for some strength to keep. Peacock herl has a tendency to break when you fish with it, or the flies that has peacock herl, so they tend to break. So what I'm going to do now is just use my hackle plier to wrap forward. So now I'm just building up the body, or the thorax, or towards the thorax. And I'm going to cut that off. So that sets up the body nicely. What I'm going to do now is get some of this, I can't remember what it's called, some flesh. I started using flash. I used Antron before, but I found that the red and the orange Antron that I used at the time, they caused some rejection of flies. So I tried to stick with something that's a little bit more like natural. This has some form of sheen, as you can see, and I think it makes for two things. So light bounces off, so I can see it properly in various different colors. The other thing that it does is that it looks a little bit more natural to the eye. I'm assuming from the vantage point of the fish. So now I'm forming a post. I'm just get it straight. Let me just do that. Just a couple of wraps in front. So I'm building up the post to a certain point. So I'm taking my time. The idea behind wrapping in front and at the back of the post is to build up a little bit of a heap of thread so that we can have a little bit of thorax when the fly is completed. So that is the effect of wrapping up front, at the back a little bit. So I'm ready now to just tie in my CDC feather. So you can see that I've selected a CDC feather that is a little bit, it's got a little bit of everything. So smaller barbs on top and then wider ones at the bottom. And as I said earlier, I'm not really a conventional fly tyer, so I do things a little bit differently. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the feather like that, lift the fibers up like that, and then strip, or at least not strip it, just keep it like that. And now I'm going to tie, I'm tying in my CDC feather like that, so with the top at the bottom. So I'm tying it in just behind the post. I'm doing about 3-4 wraps. I'm still lifting up. Well, let me just trim that excess off a little bit. That'll help. So what I'm going to do now is just lift it up and then kind of just secure with sequential wraps my CDC to the post, and that's setting it up for wrapping down. So now I'm doing a front and a back wrap, and then I want the thread to be in resting position just in front of the post. So I'm taking my hackle plier, I'm taking my CDC feather now, and just wrapping down, and because the thinner part of the CDC stem is at the top, I'm kind of just taking my time and not to put so much pressure on the feather, not to break it at all. So I'm also in a way maneuvering the CDC barbs so that it splays out a little bit more. And that went underneath. So I'm just going to stop right there, so that there's enough left when I tie off. I'm just going to take my tool over here and just do that. The barbs that are trapped, I'm just taking out. So now that I'm stopping here, I'm just going to take my thread and tie off my CDC feather, if I can get it there. So what I'm doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wraps underneath the CDC feather, and that's just to secure it. Also for small stream flies, tying on small hooks, it's a better way to finish off instead of tying off in the front of or just behind the hook eye, because it prevents building up all that bulk. So I'm doing now is just chopping it off right there, and just to finish off the fly completely, I'm just wrapping all of the barbs that way, and a couple of wraps just behind the hook eye, and I'm going to finish off with like 1/2 inch. Sorry about that, 1/2 inch, another one. Okay. And now I'm just cutting the thread off. So before I finish a fly off completely, I'm just separating the barbs a little bit, and I'm going to trim my post, cut it off. It's probably, what is that, just above the barb, not also to damage the barbs. So I'm taking it quite high and I'm cutting it off at a slant, so that there's a bit of a slant there that is also, it creates a bit of it widens the surface area, so it's easier to see from the front. So what I'm also going to do is just remember earlier when we built the thorax up with the thread, I'm just going to kind of secure those threads a little bit more and make the fly more durable. So I'm taking some super glue again, put some super glue right there. So what I think two effects that it actually has is obviously strengthening the fly a little bit more, but it also gives a little bit more of a plastic sheen that creates more of a insecty look, I think. You can see now the overall profile of the fly is quite wide. So the reasoning behind using the CDC is that CDC, besides the fact that it's a little bit more lively looking, it also creates this parachute effect because of this large kind of halo that it's creating. So what it does do is that upon landing, the descent of the fly is a lot slower. So you would have seen on the Cape streams with these large black mayflies that they have an effect where they kind of hover just above the surface of the water. And what that really does, or this fly kind of imitates that, where it lands and it creates this parachute, so it lands very softly on the water surface. So that that slow descent actually kind of like mimics this whole hovering motion of these mayflies. So it kind of induces a lot of these takes. So or at least this is my reasoning. So yeah. Okay guys, so that is my CDC mountain midge, and I hope that during those frustrating times on the Cape streams where you encounter these hovering black mayflies, that this will be a solution for you. So enjoy tying and go forth and